My name is Samantha Reynolds. I'm 52 years old. Last Tuesday night, my phone rang at 11:38 p.m. It was my daughter Jessica, sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. When I finally made out her words, my blood ran cold. She'd been kneeling in the pouring rain for over an hour. I drove to her house, breaking every speed limit. There was my Jessica, 7 months pregnant, soaking wet on the front lawn. Her husband Connor stood on the covered porch, watching coldly. "She needs to learn," he told me calmly. "She bought a dress without asking me first." As I helped my shivering daughter up, I turned to him and said, "Get your hands off my daughter, or I'm calling the police right now." Before I continue this nightmare, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. If you've ever had that gut feeling something wasn't right about someone, hit that like button. This story might save someone you love, so please subscribe to make sure more people hear it. Now, let me take you back to how this all began, because no one starts off kneeling in the rain. Abuse builds slowly, like a poison administered drop by drop. My Jessica was always a bright light. Growing up, she had that rare combination of intelligence, empathy, and drive that made people naturally gravitate to her. She graduated top of her class from UCLA with a marketing degree and landed a job at a prestigious advertising firm in San Francisco. Her career was taking off. At just 25, she'd already led campaigns for major national brands. Her future couldn't have been brighter. I still remember the exact moment she told me about Connor. We were having our weekly Sunday brunch when she mentioned meeting this amazing guy at her college roommate's wedding. Her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen before. Connor Hamilton was handsome, ambitious, and came from a good family in Boston. He worked as an investment banker at a well-known financial firm, having graduated from Wharton Business School. Looking back, there were red flags from the beginning. On our first dinner together, Connor corrected Jessica 3 times. How she pronounced a wine name, a fact about a movie, the way she retold a story about her childhood. I noticed how she seemed to shrink each time, but I dismissed it. Later, when I gently mentioned it, Jessica laughed it off. "He's just really precise, Mom. He likes getting things right." Their courtship was a whirlwind. Within 6 months of meeting, Connor proposed during an elaborate surprise weekend in Napa Valley. The engagement seemed rushed, but who was I to question their timeline? Jessica seemed happy, even if something about her had changed. She called less frequently. She started checking her phone anxiously when it buzzed. She began dressing differently, more conservative, less colorful. Styles I'd never seen her wear before. The wedding was exactly as Connor wanted it, traditional, elegant, and at the Four Seasons Hotel. Jessica had always dreamed of a beach ceremony, but Connor insisted this was more appropriate. I remember my husband Tom whispering to me, "When did our daughter become so agreeable?" We chalked it up to being in love and compromising. After the honeymoon, a carefully planned tour of European capitals that Connor had mapped out to the hour, Jessica announced she was quitting her job. Connor had convinced her that her demanding career wouldn't allow her to be the kind of wife he needed. Instead, she would focus on creating the perfect home and preparing for eventual motherhood. The daughter who had once declared she would never define herself solely through marriage was now doing exactly that. The changes accelerated after they moved into their beautiful colonial-style house in an upscale neighborhood. Jessica's visits home became less frequent. When she did visit, Connor called repeatedly to check on her whereabouts. Her vibrant group of friends dwindled as Connor found fault with each one. Amy's too loud and drinks too much. Sophia's values don't align with ours. One by one, her support system fell away. Financial control came next. Despite their combined income being well over $250,000 a year, Connor put Jessica on a strict allowance. He insisted on reviewing every receipt and questioned every purchase. "It's about being responsible," Jessica explained when I expressed concern. "Connor manages our finances because he's better with money." Her designer clothes and shoes were replaced with items Connor deemed appropriate and good value. When Jessica announced her pregnancy a year ago, I felt conflicted. While thrilled about becoming a grandmother, I worried about the growing signs of Connor's control. His behavior became even more restrictive once Jessica was pregnant. He dictated what she could eat, how much she could exercise, which prenatal vitamins to take. He attended every doctor's appointment, answering questions before Jessica could speak. He created spreadsheets tracking her weight gain to ensure it stayed within his researched optimal range. Jessica's spark continued to dim. The confident, independent woman was fading into someone who constantly sought approval, who second-guessed every decision. She stopped offering opinions and started every other sentence with "Connor thinks" or "Connor says." Her phone calls became briefer, often ending abruptly when Connor entered the room. The most telling sign was her eyes. They no longer held that sparkle. Instead, they carried a wariness, constantly scanning, as if looking for threats or mistakes she might make. Still, none of us fully recognized what was happening. We saw the signs of control, but failed to name it for what it was. Abuse. Financial abuse. Emotional abuse. Coercive control. Instead, we normalized it. Connor's just old-fashioned. He likes things a certain way. He wants what's best for her and the baby. How easily we accepted the unacceptable, all because Connor wore expensive suits, had an impressive job, and came from a good family. We were blind to the prison being built around our daughter, brick by brick, day by day. It wasn't until Jessica was in my guest bedroom, wrapped in warm blankets with a cup of tea, that she told me the full story of what happened that night. Her voice was hoarse from crying, but she needed to tell someone the truth. For months, Jessica had been wearing the same 3 maternity outfits on rotation. As her pregnancy progressed and her body changed, these few pieces were becoming increasingly uncomfortable. That morning, she had an appointment with her obstetrician. Her regular pants barely fastened, and the waistband left angry red marks on her swollen belly. After her appointment, Jessica passed by a maternity boutique. In the window was a simple navy blue dress with an empire waist. Nothing fancy, just comfortable and practical for her 3rd trimester. She went in just to look, not intending to buy anything. The price tag read $58, marked down from $120. For the first time in months, Jessica made a decision without consulting Connor first. She bought the dress. "I knew I was supposed to ask," she told me, hands trembling around her mug. "But I just wanted something that fit. Something that wouldn't hurt the baby by squeezing her all day," I thought. Since it was on sale, he might understand. When Connor arrived home that evening, Jessica was making his favorite dinner as a way to soften the news about her purchase. But before she could mention it, Connor asked for her purse, a routine inspection he conducted regularly. He found the receipt immediately. "He became so quiet," Jessica whispered. "That's always worse than when he yells. He asked me to explain why I would deliberately undermine our financial goals by making unauthorized purchases. I tried to show him the dress, explain how practical it was, but he wouldn't even look at it." Connor calculated that the $58 spent on the dress would have generated nearly $400 in retirement savings over 30 years if properly invested. He lectured Jessica for nearly an hour about financial responsibility, compound interest, and her lack of consideration for their future security, all while their household brought in over $250,000 annually. "Then he told me to get in the car," Jessica continued. "He drove me back to the store to return the dress. The saleswoman looked so confused. I was crying at the register while he stood there watching me return it. But returning the dress wasn't punishment enough in Connor's mind. When they got home, he told Jessica she needed to reflect on her selfishness and irresponsibility. His method? She would kneel on the front lawn and think about how her impulsive actions impacted their family. It was starting to rain, but he said that was appropriate. That discomfort would help the lesson stick. Jessica's voice cracked. He said if I came inside before he decided I'd learned my lesson, there would be real consequences. So Jessica knelt on the wet grass as light rain became a downpour. Connor periodically came to the window or stepped outside to ask if she understood her mistake yet. Each time, Jessica apologized desperately, but Connor would shake his head, telling her she didn't sound truly remorseful or that she was only sorry because she was uncomfortable, not because she understood the principle. After an hour, I couldn't feel my legs anymore, Jessica said. The baby was kicking so hard, like she knew something was wrong. I was scared for her. That's when I called you. Connor had controlled Jessica for so long that she didn't immediately recognize his behavior as abuse. In her mind, she had broken a rule, and punishment was expected. The normalized abnormal. It wasn't until she saw my reaction, the horror and rage on my face when I found her kneeling in the rain, that she began to understand how warped her reality had become. "He locks the doors when he goes to work," she admitted quietly. "He reviews the security camera footage to make sure I don't leave without permission. He times how long it takes me to run errands and demands explanations for any extra minutes. Last week, I spent too long at the grocery store because I was having Braxton Hicks contractions and needed to sit down. He made me show him the security footage from the store to prove I wasn't lying. The dress incident wasn't the first punishment Jessica had endured, but it was the most severe. Previous consequences included silent treatment for days, being made to write apology letters for perceived transgressions, having her phone confiscated, or being grounded from seeing friends or family. "I know how it sounds," Jessica whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I know you're wondering why I didn't leave. Why I put up with it. It happened so gradually. First, it was just him wanting to know where I was, because he worried. Then checking my spending because he was better with money. Then it was correcting how I spoke, how I dressed, who I spent time with, all because he wanted what was best for me. By the time I realized how controlled I was, I felt trapped. And now there's the baby." The doctor would later tell us that Jessica's exposure to the cold rain had put her at risk for hypothermia, and the stress could have triggered preterm labor. The baby had been in distress, with an elevated heart rate detected during monitoring. What Connor had done wasn't just cruel. It was dangerous to both Jessica and their unborn child. I'll never forget pulling up to Jessica's house that rainy night. The porch light illuminated my daughter's hunched form on the lawn, her maternity top plastered to her body, hair hanging in wet ropes around her face. Connor stood under the covered porch, arms crossed, watching her like some twisted guard. As I ran from my car, Connor stepped forward. "Samantha," he said calmly, as if we were meeting for Sunday dinner, "Jessica and I are handling a private matter. You should go home." I ignored him completely, rushing to Jessica. Her skin was ice cold, and she was shaking uncontrollably. When I helped her to her feet, she almost collapsed, her legs numb from kneeling for so long. "What have you done?" I demanded, supporting Jessica's weight as she struggled to walk. "She's pregnant, for God's sake." Connor's face remained impassive. "Jessica made an irresponsible financial decision today. We're working through the consequences. This is between a husband and wife. This is abuse," I shot back, guiding Jessica toward my car. "She needs medical attention." That's when Connor moved to block our path to my car. "Jessica isn't going anywhere. She hasn't learned her lesson yet." His tone was reasonable, as if explaining something to a child, but his eyes were cold. "Get your hands off my daughter or I'm calling the police right now," I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice despite my racing heart. "You're overreacting," Connor replied with a dismissive wave. "Jessica understands why this is necessary. Don't you?" Jessica, my daughter, who once confidently presented marketing campaigns to rooms full of executives, could barely raise her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have bought the dress without asking." "This ends now," I said firmly, helping Jessica toward the house instead of my car. "She needs dry clothes and warmth immediately." Connor's composure slipped momentarily as he realized I wasn't backing down. "This is my house. You can't just—" "Watch me," I interrupted, guiding Jessica up the porch steps. When Connor moved to physically stop us, I pulled out my phone. "One more move, and I'm calling 911. How do you think your firm will react to a domestic abuse call at their star banker's house?" That threat worked. Connor stepped aside, but followed closely as I helped Jessica inside. In the harsh bathroom light, I could see how dire her condition was. Her lips had a bluish tint, and she couldn't stop shivering. Most alarming, she winced suddenly, clutching her belly. "Are you having contractions?" I asked urgently. Jessica nodded, fear in her eyes. "They started about 20 minutes ago. They're not regular, but that was all I needed to hear. I'm calling an ambulance." Connor appeared in the doorway. "That's unnecessary. I can drive her if she really needs to go." "She needs emergency medical attention," I said, already dialing. "She's showing signs of hypothermia and may be in preterm labor." Connor lunged for my phone. Give me that. You're not calling anyone. I stepped back, keeping the phone out of his reach. This is happening, Connor. Either cooperate or explain to the EMTs why your pregnant wife is in this condition. Something in my expression must have convinced him I wouldn't back down. His demeanor shifted instantly when I connected with 911. As I reported a pregnant woman with possible hypothermia and preterm labor, Connor began gathering dry clothes and speaking in a concerned voice that made me want to scream. Sweetheart, why didn't you tell me you were feeling so bad? You should have come inside, he said loudly enough for the dispatcher to hear. The performance had begun. By the time the paramedics arrived, Connor had transformed into the picture of a worried husband. She insisted on getting some fresh air during the rain, he explained smoothly. I told her it wasn't a good idea in her condition. The lead paramedic, a woman named Diane, seemed skeptical of this story as she assessed Jessica's condition. Fresh air in 48-degree rain while 7 months pregnant? She asked, making notes on her clipboard. I saw her clock the dynamic between Connor and Jessica, my daughter's fearful glances, Connor's hovering presence, my protective stance. I think I should ride with her, I said firmly when they prepared to transport Jessica. Connor immediately objected, but Diane intervened. Limited space in the ambulance. Mom rides with us, Dad can follow in his car. Her tone left no room for argument. As they loaded Jessica into the ambulance, Connor gripped my arm. This is my family. You have no right to interfere. I pulled free of his grasp. This is my daughter. What you've done is abuse, and it ends today. His mask slipped again, revealing the cold calculation beneath. You'll regret this, Samantha. Jessica belongs with me. We'll see about that, I replied, climbing into the ambulance beside my daughter. As we pulled away, I saw Connor standing in the driveway, already on his phone. I knew this battle was just beginning, but for the first time that night, Jessica was safe from him. For now, that was enough. The emergency room was a flurry of activity as nurses connected Jessica to monitors, wrapped her in warming blankets, and drew blood for tests. Her body temperature was 95.3 degrees. Mild hypothermia, the doctor explained. But concerning, especially given her pregnancy. The fetal heart monitor showed an elevated baby heart rate, and Jessica was having irregular contractions that needed to be stopped to prevent preterm labor. We need to keep her overnight for observation at minimum, Dr. Chen explained. We want to make sure the contractions stop completely and that both mom and baby remain stable. Connor arrived 20 minutes later, having composed himself completely. He played the role of concerned husband flawlessly, asking appropriate questions, thanking the medical staff, keeping his hand possessively on Jessica's shoulder. But I noticed how Jessica tensed at his touch, how her eyes darted to him before answering any question directed at her. Dr. Chen picked up on the dynamic as well. Mrs. Reynolds, she addressed me. Could I speak with you about some paperwork while the nurses get your daughter settled? Her pointed look told me this wasn't about paperwork at all. In a quiet consultation room, Dr. Chen got straight to the point. Your daughter's condition raises some concerns beyond the medical issues. Can you tell me what really happened tonight? I explained the situation as Jessica had described it to me. Dr. Chen's expression remained professional, but I saw the anger in her eyes. I've seen cases like this before, she said quietly. The physical symptoms are just the surface. Has your daughter disclosed any other incidents? Not specifically, but I've noticed controlling behaviors escalating over time, I admitted. Ashamed that I hadn't intervened sooner. Dr. Chen nodded. We have a hospital policy for situations like this. With your daughter's permission, I'd like to have our social worker speak with her, alone, and I'm going to arrange for her to have a private room with restricted visitor access. When we returned, Connor was questioning a nurse about discharge procedures for the following day. Dr. Chen smoothly interrupted, explaining that Jessica needed a specialized monitoring room where only one visitor could stay overnight. As her husband, that would be me, Connor stated firmly. Actually, Dr. Chen countered, Jessica has requested her mother stay. Hospital policy allows the patient to choose. Connor's jaw tightened, but surrounded by medical staff, he couldn't object without looking unreasonable. I'll return first thing tomorrow morning then, he said, leaning down to kiss Jessica's forehead. Feel better, sweetheart. Remember what we talked about. The last sentence was delivered with a subtle edge that made Jessica shrink visibly. After Connor left, Jessica visibly relaxed, her body seeming to melt into the hospital bed with relief. A kind-eyed nurse named Maria came in to check Jessica's vital signs. The doctors ordered a mild sedative to help you rest and keep those contractions at bay, she explained. Your husband won't be allowed back until regular visiting hours tomorrow, and even then, only if you want to see him. You're safe here. Those 3 simple words, "You're safe here," broke something open in Jessica. After Maria administered the medication and left, Jessica turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she whispered, "I don't know how it got this bad." Over the next few hours, as the hospital quieted for the night, Jessica's story poured out in devastating detail. The control had started with small things. Suggestions about her clothes, her hair, her friends. Connor would frame his criticisms as helpful advice. "That color doesn't flatter you," or "That friend seems like a negative influence." After they married, he insisted on joint bank accounts that only he could access. Jessica's paycheck was deposited directly, and Connor provided her with a weekly allowance transferred to a separate checking account he monitored daily. "I have to keep all receipts," she explained. "Every night, he reconciles my spending against the receipts. If anything is missing or doesn't match, I'm financially irresponsible and my allowance gets reduced." The monitoring extended far beyond finances. Connor had installed a sophisticated home security system that allowed him to check cameras remotely. He reviewed footage daily to confirm Jessica's activities matched what she reported. He tracked her location through her phone and called repeatedly if she deviated from her approved schedule. "He times my errands," Jessica said dully. "Grocery shopping should take 42 minutes based on his calculations. If I'm gone 50 minutes, I have to explain those 8 minutes in detail." The pregnancy had escalated his controlling behavior exponentially. Connor was obsessed with having a perfect, healthy son. They hadn't learned the baby's sex, but Connor was convinced it was a boy and referred to the baby as him exclusively. He monitored everything Jessica ate, drank, or did that might affect his son. "Last month, I craved ice cream so badly," Jessica confessed. "I bought a small cup at the mall food court and ate it in the bathroom so the security cameras wouldn't catch me. Then I was so scared he'd smell it on my breath that I bought mouthwash and used it twice before going home." The hospital social worker, Lisa Bennett, joined us around midnight. With gentle, direct questions, she helped Jessica identify patterns of abuse that had become normalized: the isolation from friends and family, the financial control, the surveillance, the punishments disguised as consequences. "What happened tonight wasn't discipline or a marriage disagreement," Lisa explained kindly. "It was abuse. Physical, emotional, and financial. Forcing someone to kneel outside in the rain is not a normal response to buying a dress, especially not when that person is pregnant." Jessica struggled to accept this framing. "But I broke our agreement," she insisted. "I know I'm supposed to consult him on purchases." "Jessica," Lisa asked gently, "if your best friend told you her husband made her kneel in the rain for hours because she bought a maternity dress, what would you call that?" Jessica was silent for a long moment. "Abuse," she finally whispered. "I would call it abuse." The word hung in the air between us, finally named after years of euphemisms and excuses. "I'm scared," Jessica admitted. "The baby is coming in 2 months. Connor has all our money, all our assets in his name. My name isn't even on the house deed. Where would I go? What would I do?" "You don't have to figure everything out tonight," Lisa assured her. "Right now, you and your baby need rest and medical care. There are resources, options, and support available when you're ready." As Jessica finally drifted to sleep under the influence of the sedative, I sat in the uncomfortable hospital chair watching her face. For the first time in months, she looked peaceful, the constant vigilance temporarily suspended in sleep. My phone lit up with a text from Connor. "I expect a full report on Jessica's condition. Remember that decisions about my wife and son are mine to make. Don't fill her head with nonsense." I turned off my phone without responding. The battle lines had been drawn, and I knew with absolute certainty that I would do whatever it took to free my daughter from this man's control. By morning, Jessica's condition had stabilized. The contractions had stopped. Her temperature was normal, and the baby's heartbeat was strong and regular. But while her physical crisis had passed, the emotional and practical challenges were just beginning. I stepped into the hallway to call my husband Tom, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Jessica. "It's worse than we thought," I told him, after explaining the situation. "This isn't just controlling behavior, Tom. It's systematic abuse." Tom's initial disbelief quickly gave way to horror and then determination. "I'm coming right now, and I'm calling Ryan too." Our son Ryan lived about an hour away, working as an engineer. He and Jessica had always been close growing up despite their 4-year age difference. "Call my sister Carol too," I added. "We need all the support we can get right now." Within 2 hours, our small family army had assembled at the hospital. Tom arrived first, his face ashen when he saw Jessica sleeping in the hospital bed, still connected to monitors. Ryan followed soon after, pacing the small room with barely contained rage when I explained what Connor had done. "I'm going to kill him," Ryan said, his voice shaking. "I always knew something was off about that guy, but this." "That's not going to help your sister," Tom said firmly, though I could see he was struggling with similar impulses. "We need to be smart about this. Jessica needs options and support, not more chaos." My sister Carol arrived last, bringing practical energy to the situation. A retired social worker herself, she immediately began taking notes and asking questions about resources, legal options, and safety planning. "The most dangerous time for women in abusive relationships is when they try to leave," Carol explained. "We need to be methodical about this." As we talked, Jessica woke up, initially startled to find her room full of family members. For a brief moment, panic flashed across her face, a conditioned response to having visitors Connor hadn't approved. Then recognition and relief followed as she registered that Connor wasn't present. "You're all here," she said softly, tears welling up. Ryan moved to his sister's side immediately. "Of course we're here, Jess. We're not going anywhere." The family meeting that followed was both heartbreaking and healing. Jessica shared more details about her life with Connor, the isolation, the rules, the constant fear of making mistakes. Each revelation hit us like physical blows, especially when Jessica admitted she'd tried to reach out subtly several times. "Remember when I asked if you thought Connor was too strict about money, Mom? Or when I joked about him being the boss at Christmas? I was trying to see if anyone else thought it was strange. But everyone just laughed or said how lucky I was to have a husband who handled the finances." The guilt was overwhelming. We had all missed or dismissed the signs, interpreting control as care, isolation as devotion. "We failed you," Tom said, his voice breaking. "We should have seen what was happening." "Connor was very careful around all of you," Jessica replied. "He knows exactly how to present himself to different people. And he made sure I never had enough time alone with any of you to really talk." As the morning progressed, we worked through practical considerations. Connor would undoubtedly return during visiting hours, expecting to take control of the situation. Jessica needed to decide whether she felt safe seeing him and what her next steps would be. "I don't think I can go back to that house," she admitted, voicing the decision that had been forming since the previous night. "But I'm terrified of what he'll do. The baby comes in less than 2 months. He's going to fight for custody. He's obsessed with having a son to carry on the Hamilton name. One step at a time," Carol advised. "Right now, you need a safe place to stay after discharge. Everything else can be addressed with proper legal support." "She'll stay with us," Tom and I said simultaneously. As we discussed logistics, a hospital volunteer delivered a massive bouquet of roses, Connor's first strategic move. The attached card read, "To my darling wife, get well soon, and come home where you belong. All is forgiven. Love, Connor." Jessica stared at the flowers with visible anxiety. He's never apologized after a punishment before. He must realize how bad this looks. Ryan read the card and scoffed. "All is forgiven? He's forgiving you for buying a maternity dress? This guy is unbelievable." A soft knock at the door revealed Dr. Chen with discharge papers and Lisa the social worker. "We'd like to speak with Jessica alone for a moment, if that's all right," Dr. Chen requested. When they returned after their private consultation, Jessica looked more resolved. They've given me resources for domestic violence survivors, she explained. And Dr. Chen has recommended 2 more weeks of bed rest due to the risk of preterm labor from stress. Those 2 weeks give us time to create a safety plan, Carol noted. As we finalized our immediate strategy, our phones began buzzing one after another. Connor was methodically contacting each family member. To Tom, I understand your concern as Jessica's father, but this is being blown out of proportion. Jessica had a moment of irresponsibility, and we had a disagreement. Let's discuss this man to man. To Ryan, your sister is having emotional difficulties related to her pregnancy hormones. She's not thinking clearly. As her brother, you should be supporting our marriage, not undermining it. To Carol, I've always respected your experience as a social worker. Surely you understand that family matters should remain private. Jessica needs calm and stability right now, not interference. Each message was perfectly calibrated to its recipient, designed to sow doubt and division. But Connor's tactics had the opposite effect. Seeing his manipulation attempts laid bare only strengthened our collective resolve. The most chilling message came to my phone. Samantha, I know you think you're protecting Jessica, but you're actually harming her and my son. Remember that I have resources you can't imagine. Don't start a war you can't win. I showed the message to the others, and Tom's face hardened. Is he threatening you? He's threatening all of us, Carol observed. This isn't an unusual tactic for abusers when their control is challenged. A hospital security alert interrupted our discussion. Connor had arrived and was demanding to see his wife. Jessica visibly trembled at the news. You don't have to see him, Lisa, the social worker assured her. You have the right to decline visitors. After a moment's hesitation, Jessica straightened her shoulders. I need to see him. If I don't, he'll just escalate. But I don't want to see him alone. And so our family battle lines were drawn. Jessica in the hospital bed, Tom and I flanking her like sentries, Ryan and Carol positioned strategically by the door. When Connor entered, his confident stride faltered momentarily at finding the room full of people. But Connor Hamilton was nothing, if not adaptable. Within seconds, his expression transformed into one of relieved concern. Darling, you look so much better, he exclaimed, approaching Jessica with an outstretched hand. Jessica flinched almost imperceptibly, but allowed him to take her hand. The doctor says, I need 2 weeks of bed rest, she said, her voice remarkably steady. I'll be staying with my parents. Connor's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. That's unnecessary, sweetheart. I've already arranged to work from home to take care of you. Jessica needs rest and reduced stress, I interjected. Her parents' home is the best place for that right now. Connor turned to me, his expression pleasant, but his tone carrying a subtle edge. With all due respect, Samantha, these decisions should be made between my wife and me. The decision has been made, Jessica said quietly. I'm going to my parents' house after discharge. For a fraction of a second, Connor's mask slipped, revealing a flash of cold fury before the concerned husband persona returned. We'll discuss this privately, he said, squeezing Jessica's hand slightly too hard. There's nothing to discuss, Tom stated, moving closer to Jessica. Our daughter is coming home with us to recover. Connor assessed the unified front before him and made a tactical retreat. Of course, he said smoothly. Whatever's best for Jessica and the baby. I'll get the house ready for your return after your rest period. As he left, his parting words to Jessica carried a veiled warning. I'll call you tonight, darling. Remember, stress isn't good for our son. When the door closed behind him, Jessica released a shuddering breath. He's not going to let this go. No, Carol agreed. But now you have something you didn't have before. What's that? Jessica asked. Us, Ryan said firmly. All of us, together. The next morning, Jessica was discharged into our care. Tom and Ryan created a protective formation around her as we walked to the car, scanning constantly for signs of Connor. Though he hadn't returned to the hospital after his visit the previous day, none of us doubted he was monitoring the situation closely. Our house had been hastily prepared for Jessica's arrival. Ryan had installed new locks and a security system. Tom had converted his home office into a bedroom so Jessica wouldn't have to climb stairs. I had stocked the kitchen with her favorite foods and pregnancy-safe teas. For the first day, things were quiet. Too quiet. Connor called once, speaking to Jessica with careful politeness, asking about her health and the baby. He didn't mention her return to their home or the incident that had precipitated this crisis. The calculated restraint was more unnerving than outright aggression would have been. "He's regrouping," Carol warned as we discussed the situation over dinner. "Abusers don't relinquish control easily. He's planning his next move." That move came the following morning. A delivery truck arrived with flowers, baby gifts, and a small wrapped package for Jessica. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a note. "To remind you where you belong, come home." Jessica stared at the bracelet, her hands shaking. "This is the same design as the security monitoring anklet he talked about getting for when the baby is born," she whispered. "He said it was to keep track of our son at all times. It's a message, he's still watching me." Later that day, Connor began his systematic campaign to regain control. First came the practical pressure. He froze their joint accounts, leaving Jessica without access to any funds. He reported their shared credit cards stolen, rendering them unusable. He contacted Jessica's obstetrician, presenting himself as a concerned husband whose pregnant wife was having a mental health crisis. Mrs. Hamilton canceled her upcoming appointment. The doctor's receptionist said when I called to confirm Jessica's next checkup. Her husband informed us she's receiving psychiatric care. Connor's tactics escalated from practical to social. He began contacting Jessica's few remaining friends and our extended family, crafting a narrative of Jessica's pregnancy-induced anxiety and irrational behavior. According to Connor, Jessica had become paranoid, making up stories about him, and her family was unfortunately enabling these delusions instead of getting her proper psychiatric help. Cousin Margaret called. "I told Jessica 3 days after her discharge. Connor told her you're having a psychiatric episode and we're keeping you from getting treatment. He's telling everyone the same story." Jessica closed her eyes, unsurprised. Classic Connor. He's always 3 steps ahead, creating his preferred reality. Most disturbing were the voicemails and texts Connor sent directly to Jessica. They oscillated between loving concern. "Sweetheart, I miss you so much. Please come home so I can take care of you." Veiled threats. "You know this separation isn't good for the baby. Think about our son." And subtle gaslighting. "I forgive you for the things you've said about me. I know the pregnancy is affecting your thinking." 5 days after Jessica came to stay with us, Connor appeared on our doorstep unannounced. Fortunately, Tom and I were both home, while Jessica was napping upstairs. "I'd like to see my wife," Connor stated when I opened the door, not bothering with pleasantries. He looked immaculate as always in an expensive suit. But there was a tightly wound energy about him that made me instinctively block the doorway. "Jessica is resting," I replied. "Doctor's orders. As her husband, I have a right to see her," Connor insisted, attempting to look past me into the house. "I've brought some things she needs." Tom joined me at the door. "Jessica doesn't want visitors right now, Connor. You can leave whatever you've brought, and we'll give it to her when she wakes up." Connor's face hardened. "You can't keep her from me. She's my wife. She's also an adult who can make her own decisions," Tom countered, "and she's decided she needs space right now." Connor shifted tactics, his voice taking on a reasonable, concerned tone. "I understand you're worried about Jessica. I am too. But separating a pregnant woman from her husband isn't healthy. She needs stability right now, not this." Intervention. "What Jessica needed was to not be forced to kneel in the rain for buying a dress," I replied, my patience wearing thin. Connor's expression didn't change, but his eyes turned glacial. "Jessica has clearly been telling you stories. She's always had a flair for the dramatic. But this is beyond acceptable. I've consulted a lawyer about her mental state and my rights regarding our unborn child." "You do what you feel you need to do," Tom responded, "but you're not coming into this house unless Jessica wants to see you." Connor's mask slipped then, just for a moment, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "This isn't over. Jessica and my son will be coming home where they belong. You're all going to regret interfering in our marriage." As he turned to leave, he delivered a final threat. "I have resources you can't imagine and connections you don't know about. Don't make an enemy of me." After he left, We found Jessica standing at the top of the stairs, having overheard the exchange. "He's never going to stop," she said, her voice hollow. "He'll use every resource he has to get me back under his control. Then we'll use every resource we have to keep you free," I promised. The next day, Connor's escalation continued with a more public approach. Flowers and gifts began arriving at our house hourly, elaborate, expensive arrangements that required acknowledgement and thanks. Each delivery person was different, but all had been instructed to hand the gifts directly to Jessica if possible. It was surveillance disguised as generosity. "He's trying to establish contact and track your location," Ryan observed, as we refused another delivery. Classic stalking behavior. After the deliveries came the wellness checks. Connor had apparently told neighbors and acquaintances that Jessica was suffering from prenatal depression and might be a danger to herself. 3 different concerned citizens stopped by our house to check on Jessica within a single day. Connor's most strategic move came that evening. As we were finishing dinner, a police officer appeared at our door, explaining that Connor Hamilton had reported his pregnant wife was being held at this address against her will by her family. The officer, a woman named Sergeant Rivera, handled the situation with surprising sensitivity. "Mrs. Hamilton, I need to speak with you privately to confirm you're here voluntarily," she explained. After a brief private conversation with Jessica, Sergeant Rivera returned to her patrol car to file her report. Before leaving, she handed Jessica a card. "The department has resources for domestic situations," she said meaningfully. "If you need anything, ask for me directly." As the patrol car pulled away, Jessica collapsed into tears. "He's using the system against me. He'll use anything, the police, the courts, our friends, even this baby, to regain control." That night, we installed security cameras around the property. None of us said it aloud, but we all felt the escalating threat. Connor Hamilton was a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Being denied his wife and unborn child, possessions in his mind, was intolerable. His campaign to reclaim them was just beginning, and we needed to be prepared for whatever came next. While Connor executed his campaign of pressure and manipulation, Jessica began her own journey of recovery and preparation. The first week in my home was largely physical healing, giving her body the rest it desperately needed after months of stress and the traumatic kneeling incident. But as her physical strength returned, the harder emotional work began. Lisa, the hospital social worker, connected Jessica with Meredith Taylor, a therapist specializing in domestic abuse recovery. Twice weekly, Meredith came to our home for sessions. We were still avoiding public places where Connor might create a scene. "You're experiencing trauma bonding," Meredith explained during one session that Jessica asked me to join. "It's similar to Stockholm Syndrome. The cycles of abuse, followed by reconciliation, create powerful biochemical responses. Fear, relief, gratitude. Breaking those bonds is difficult, but possible." Jessica nodded. "I keep having these moments where I think, maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I'm overreacting, even though I know what he did was wrong." "That's normal," Meredith assured her. "Your brain is trying to make sense of the relationship and protect you from the pain of acknowledging the full reality." With Meredith's guidance, Jessica began identifying the patterns of abuse in her relationship, recognizing how Connor had systematically isolated and controlled her. The process was painful, but necessary. Alongside this emotional work, practical preparations were underway. Carol had connected us with Patricia Winters, a family law attorney specializing in domestic violence cases. Patricia's first priority was establishing financial independence for Jessica. "Abusers use financial control as handcuffs," Patricia explained during our initial consultation. "We need to break those cuffs before we can address the larger legal issues." Patricia helped Jessica open new bank accounts at a different bank, apply for a credit card in her own name, and file for temporary emergency support from Connor. She also connected Jessica with resources for pregnant women in crisis, securing immediate prenatal care coverage. The most surprising breakthrough came from an unexpected source. 3 days after our legal preparations began, Jessica received an email from Amanda, Connor's former executive assistant. "I saw what happened at the hospital," Amanda wrote. "I left Connor's firm 6 months ago because of his behavior. I have documentation that might help you." Amanda had kept detailed records of Connor's controlling behavior at work, his rage episodes behind closed doors, his manipulation of colleagues, his obsessive planning for his perfect family life. Most importantly, she had emails and texts in which Connor discussed his strategies for managing Jessica with a close friend. "I know it's not my place," Amanda wrote, "but I recognize the signs from my own abusive relationship. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least offer this information." The evidence Amanda provided became the foundation for our legal strategy. With documentation of Connor's controlling behavior predating the pregnancy, his claims of Jessica's pregnancy-induced mental instability lost credibility. 10 days after Jessica came to stay with us, we were ready for the next step, filing for divorce and a restraining order. The decision wasn't made lightly. "Once we file, there's no going back," Patricia warned. "Connor will likely escalate significantly. Are you prepared for that?" Jessica placed a protective hand over her growing belly. "I have to be. Not just for me, but for her." She had learned the week before that the baby she carried was indeed a girl, not the son Connor was so obsessed with having. The restraining order request detailed Connor's abuse, including the kneeling incident, financial control, surveillance, and ongoing harassment. Jessica's medical records, witness statements from family members and Amanda, and Connor's own incriminating texts provided supporting evidence. The day we filed the paperwork, Connor's escalation reached new heights. Somehow, he learned about the filing almost immediately. His initial response was a barrage of texts and calls to Jessica, alternating between tearful pleas, "Please don't do this to our family," furious accusations, "You ungrateful bitch, after everything I've done for you," and cold threats, "You'll regret this for the rest of your life." When Jessica didn't respond, Connor shifted tactics. Ryan and Tom went to Jessica and Connor's house to collect essential items she would need for the remainder of her pregnancy. What they found was disturbing. "The house is wired with cameras everywhere," Ryan reported when they returned. "Bedroom, bathroom, closets, there's no privacy anywhere. And we found these." He held up small electronic devices. Hidden microphones in her makeup containers, jewelry box, even sewn into her coat collar. But the most alarming discovery came when they checked Jessica's laptop and phone, which had been left behind in her hasty departure. Both had been installed with sophisticated spyware that recorded every keystroke, message, and location. "He was monitoring everything," Jessica whispered, staring at the evidence of invasion. "Every text, every search, every conversation." Patricia immediately added this evidence to our restraining order request. "This strengthens our case significantly," she assured us. "The court takes this level of surveillance very seriously." 3 days later, the temporary restraining order was granted. Connor was legally prohibited from contacting Jessica or coming within 500 feet of her, our home, or her doctor's offices. Connor's response was immediate and strategic. He hired Sherman Wallace, one of the most expensive and aggressive divorce attorneys in the state. Wallace wasted no time filing motions, challenging the restraining order, and requesting emergency custody evaluations based on concerns about Jessica's mental stability. "This is standard procedure for abusers with resources," Patricia explained. "They use the legal system to maintain control and punish their victims for leaving. We were expecting this. What we weren't expecting was Connor's next move. Using his financial industry connections, he began a whisper campaign questioning Tom's business practices, resulting in an unexpected routine audit of Tom's small accounting firm. He somehow accessed Jessica's old therapy records from college for routine anxiety and submitted them as evidence of long-standing mental health issues. He even had his lawyer suggest that Jessica's family had a history of fabricating abuse allegations, citing a completely unrelated case involving a distant cousin. "He's trying to destroy everyone around me," Jessica realized. "This isn't just about getting me back anymore. It's about punishment." The pressure was taking its toll on Jessica. Now nearly 8 months pregnant, she struggled with the stress of upcoming court appearances and Connor's relentless legal maneuvers. Her blood pressure was rising, and her obstetrician, Dr. Wallace, expressed concern about preeclampsia. "Your body is telling you something," Dr. Wallace said during a checkup. "This level of stress isn't sustainable for you or your baby." But Jessica remained resolute. "I lived under his control for 3 years, she told me one night, her hand resting on her belly where her daughter kicked energetically. I won't let my daughter spend even one day under it. Whatever it takes, I'm going to break free of him completely. As the initial court date for the restraining order hearing approached, we fortified our physical and emotional defenses. Jessica practiced her testimony daily with Patricia, preparing for the inevitable attack on her credibility. Our extended family created a schedule, ensuring Jessica was never alone. The security system was upgraded, and cameras monitored our property constantly. Through it all, Jessica slowly reclaimed pieces of herself. She reconnected with friends Connor had forced her to abandon. She began making small decisions independently again. What to eat, what to wear, how to prepare the nursery corner in her temporary bedroom. Each choice, no matter how small, was an act of rebellion against Connor's control. I keep waiting to feel guilty for leaving, she confided in me the night before the court hearing. That's what he programmed me to feel, guilty for any independence. But instead, I just feel angry. Angry that I accepted his control for so long. Angry that I have to fight so hard for basic freedom. That anger is healthy, I told her. It means you're healing. Jessica placed my hand on her belly, where her daughter was moving. I thought I was trapped forever, she whispered. But she saved me. Kneeling in the rain that night, I wasn't thinking about myself anymore. I was thinking about her, and suddenly, his power over me shattered. I just needed to protect her more than I needed his approval. The next morning, as we prepared to leave for court, Jessica stood straighter than I had seen in years. She had chosen a simple blue maternity dress, professional, dignified, but also a silent statement. This was the dress she had tried to buy, the purchase that had triggered Connor's punishment. Now she wore a similar one to face him in court, a small but powerful reclamation of her autonomy. Ready? I asked, helping her with her coat. Jessica nodded, resting both hands protectively over her daughter. Ready to be free. The restraining order hearing was both victory and ordeal. Connor arrived with his attorney Sherman Wallace and a female character witness, a colleague who testified about Connor's impeccable reputation and concern for his wife's pregnancy-induced mental health issues. Jessica maintained her composure throughout, even when Wallace aggressively questioned her about her history of exaggeration and emotional instability. The turning point came when Patricia presented the surveillance evidence. Photos of the hidden cameras throughout their home, the spyware reports, and most damning, Connor's own texts discussing his discipline methods. Judge Martinez granted a 6-month restraining order, ordering Connor to maintain 500 feet of distance and prohibiting all contact except through attorneys regarding divorce and custody matters. Connor's face remained impassive at the ruling, but as he left the courtroom, he locked eyes with Jessica momentarily. The cold hatred in his gaze sent a chill through the room. He's going to focus everything on custody now, Patricia warned as we left the courthouse through a security escort. The baby is his last means of controlling Jessica. Patricia's prediction proved accurate. Within days, Connor's legal team filed extensive motions regarding the unborn child. They demanded Connor be present at the birth, requested immediate joint custody upon delivery, and petitioned for thrice-weekly prenatal updates from Jessica's doctors. Judge Martinez denied most requests, but ordered Jessica's medical team to provide Connor's attorney with weekly updates on the pregnancy's progression. It was a minor concession, but it rattled Jessica nonetheless. He's still finding ways to monitor me, she said, reviewing the court order. Even with a restraining order, he's maintaining surveillance. The stress of the legal battle took its physical toll. At Jessica's 36-week appointment, Dr. Wallace detected elevated blood pressure and protein in her urine. Early signs of preeclampsia. I'm admitting you for monitoring, Dr. Wallace said firmly. With your history of stress and these symptoms, I don't want to take chances. The hospital stay was meant to be precautionary, but 3 days later, Jessica woke up with severe upper abdominal pain. Tests showed her liver enzymes were elevated, a dangerous progression of preeclampsia. We need to induce labor, Dr. Wallace explained. Delivery is the only cure for preeclampsia, and continuing the pregnancy has become riskier than early delivery. Word of the induction somehow reached Connor despite our careful privacy measures. As Jessica was being prepared for labor, Connor appeared in the maternity ward, demanding to be present for his child's birth. I have a legal right to be there, he insisted to hospital security. That's my son being born. The hospital's legal team quickly intervened, confirming that the restraining order superseded any perceived paternal rights regarding birth attendance. Connor was escorted from the premises, but the damage was done. Jessica's blood pressure spiked dangerously after learning of his presence, accelerating the need for immediate delivery. After 14 hours of difficult labor, Lily Grace Reynolds Hamilton was born, 5 pounds, 4 ounces, small but healthy with a powerful set of lungs and a full head of dark hair. The moment the nurse placed Lily in Jessica's arms, something powerful shifted. "He has no power over us anymore," Jessica whispered to her daughter. "I will never let anyone control either of us again." Connor's reaction to his daughter's birth, and the fact that she wasn't the son he had anticipated, was swift and furious. Within hours, his attorney filed for an emergency custody hearing, claiming Jessica was mentally unfit and had deliberately induced early labor to exclude Connor from the birth. The accusation was absurd, but it achieved its purpose, forcing Jessica to focus on legal matters during what should have been a peaceful bonding period with her newborn. Judge Martinez scheduled the emergency hearing for when Lily was just 5 days old. Jessica appeared in court exhausted but determined, Lily sleeping against her chest in a carrier. Connor presented himself as the devastated father, denied his right to witness his child's birth, and now being alienated from his newborn daughter. His attorney argued for immediate 50/50 custody, including overnight visits beginning immediately. "Your Honor, my client has prepared a fully equipped nursery. He has hired a night nurse to assist with the baby's care. He is fully prepared to be an equal parent from day one," Wallace argued. Patricia countered with medical evidence about newborns' need for consistent maternal contact, particularly for breastfeeding babies like Lily. She also presented the restraining order evidence again, asking the court to consider whether a man who forced his pregnant wife to kneel in the rain as punishment should have unsupervised access to an infant. The court appointed Dr. Eleanor Simmons as guardian ad litem, an independent advocate responsible for determining Lily's best interests. Dr. Simmons would observe both parents, interview family members and witnesses, and make custody recommendations to the court. The process was grueling for Jessica. While recovering from childbirth and adjusting to life with a newborn, she had to document every feeding, diaper change, and sleep period. She met with Dr. Simmons weekly, explaining her parenting choices and demonstrating her bond with Lily. Every decision was scrutinized, every emotional response evaluated. Connor, meanwhile, cultivated a perfect facade. His home was immaculate, the nursery professionally designed. He took parenting classes, joined fathers' support groups, and presented himself as a deeply involved father being maliciously separated from his daughter. "He's playing the long game," Patricia observed after a particularly difficult court appearance when Lily was 3 weeks old. "He knows he can't get full custody immediately, so he's building a case for increased access over time." The court's temporary ruling reflected this strategy. Connor was granted supervised visitation twice weekly for 2 hours, with supervision provided by a court-appointed monitor. It was less than he'd demanded, but more than Jessica wanted. The first visitation was traumatic for everyone. Connor arrived with photographer to document the special moment, bringing an elaborate gift basket of designer baby clothes. All in blue, despite knowing Lily was a girl. He held Lily awkwardly, more interested in appearing paternal for the supervisor's notes than actually connecting with his daughter. "How's my little man today?" he cooed, deliberately using male pronouns despite Jessica's corrections. After each visit, Lily was fussy and unsettled, requiring hours to calm down. Jessica documented these reactions meticulously for Dr. Simmons, who took note but reminded Jessica that the court prioritized father-child relationships whenever possible. The custody evaluation dragged on for months, consuming Jessica's energy and resources. Connor leveraged every advantage. His financial power allowed him to hire expert witnesses. His professional connections provided character references, and his carefully cultivated image as a devoted father impressed court officials. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Connor's former executive assistant Amanda, who had provided evidence for the restraining order, revealed that Connor had discussed his custody strategy with a colleague while still at the firm. "It's about winning," Connor had written in an email Amanda had preserved. "Once I have partial custody, I can slowly increase it over time. The child is leverage, the only way to keep Jessica connected to me permanently." Dr. Simmons found this evidence compelling. This suggests Mr. Hamilton's interest in custody is primarily about control, not his daughter's well-being, she noted in her report. The final custody hearing occurred when Lily was 6 months old. By then, Jessica had recovered physically from birth, was working part-time from home, and had established a consistent routine with Lily. Connor had maintained the supervised visitations without incident, building his case for expanded access. The courtroom was tense as both sides presented their final arguments. Wallace painted Connor as a successful, stable father being denied his rightful role in his daughter's life due to one regrettable disagreement that had been grossly mischaracterized. Patricia methodically presented the evidence of Connor's controlling behavior, the surveillance, the financial abuse, and most importantly, his own words revealing his strategic approach to custody. Judge Martinez reviewed Dr. Simmons' recommendations carefully before delivering her ruling. Jessica would retain primary physical custody. Connor's visitation would remain supervised for 6 months, after which the arrangement would be reevaluated based on his compliance with court-ordered counseling for abusive behavior. Connor's mask slipped momentarily at the ruling, his face contorting with fury before he quickly composed himself. "This isn't over," he muttered to his attorney, just loudly enough for Jessica to hear as they left the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, Jessica held Lily close, breathing deeply for what felt like the first time in months. "We did it," she whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "We're safe." But we all knew Connor's threat was not empty. The custody battle wasn't over. It had simply moved into a new phase. Connor would use every visitation, every court appearance, every interaction involving Lily as an opportunity to reassert control. Yet, something fundamental had changed. Jessica stood straighter now, her eyes clear and direct. The woman who had once accepted kneeling in the rain as a deserved punishment now faced her abuser with unwavering resolve, protected by legal boundaries she would enforce with fierce determination. "He can try whatever he wants," Jessica said as we drove home from court. "But I'm not afraid anymore. For the first time in years, I'm completely free of his power." In her car seat, Lily gurgled happily, reaching for the sunlight streaming through the window, blissfully unaware of the battle that had been fought for her future, for her right to grow up watching her mother stand tall instead of kneel. 6 months after the custody ruling, Jessica and Lily moved into their own apartment, a sunny 2-bedroom in a secure building with 24-hour concierge service. The move was a significant milestone in Jessica's journey toward complete independence. "It's small," Jessica acknowledged as we arranged furniture in the living room, "but it's ours. No cameras, no rules, no walking on eggshells." She traced her finger along a bright yellow wall she'd painted herself, a color Connor would have never permitted. "I can breathe here." Jessica's transformation over the past year had been remarkable. The frightened, diminished woman who once sought permission for the smallest decisions now managed her own finances, made independent choices, and advocated fiercely for herself and her daughter. The healing process wasn't linear. Jessica still had nightmares about Connor, still checked for surveillance devices when entering new spaces, still prepared exhaustive justifications for purchases before remembering she answered only to herself now. But these moments came less frequently as months passed. Her therapy sessions with Meredith continued, now focusing less on immediate trauma response and more on long-term recovery. "Abuse changes your neural pathways," Meredith explained. "We're essentially rewiring your brain to recognize healthy relationships and boundaries." Jessica had also begun attending a support group for survivors of domestic abuse. Initially reluctant to share her story, she gradually found her voice among women who truly understood the insidious nature of coercive control. "I thought my situation wasn't bad enough because he rarely raised his voice, never hit me," Jessica confided after one session. But listening to these women's experiences, the control, isolation, financial abuse, it's the same pattern with different details. "I'm not alone in this." Professionally, Jessica had found a supportive employer, a small marketing firm willing to offer flexible hours while she balanced single parenthood and ongoing legal matters. Her confidence in her work grew steadily, her natural creativity and strategic thinking re-emerging after years of suppression. Our family dynamics had evolved as well. The crisis had revealed both strengths and weaknesses in our relationships. Tom and I had confronted our failure to recognize Jessica's abuse sooner, working through our guilt with a family therapist. Ryan had channeled his protective instincts into positive support, helping Jessica with practical matters rather than focusing on anger toward Connor. Most beautiful was watching Jessica reclaim her identity as a mother on her own terms. Connor had attempted to dictate every aspect of pregnancy and parenting, from prenatal vitamins to nursery colors. Now Jessica made these choices independently, discovering her own parenting style, nurturing but not overprotective, structured but flexible. Lily thrived under her mother's care, growing into a curious, joyful 1-year-old with Jessica's expressive eyes and infectious laugh. She reached milestones early, babbling constantly and taking her first steps just before her first birthday. Connor remained a complicated shadow in their lives. The supervised visitations continued, though Connor often canceled at the last minute when business emergencies arose. His interest in Lily seemed to wax and wane depending on his latest legal strategy. During one particularly tense exchange at the visitation center, Connor attempted to reassert control by criticizing Jessica's parenting. "She's clearly not getting enough protein. Her color is off. And these clothes are too casual for my daughter." Instead of shrinking or apologizing as she once would have, Jessica simply raised an eyebrow. Lily's pediatrician is very pleased with her development. The visitation report will reflect your concerns, but unless you have a medical degree I'm unaware of, we'll continue following doctor's recommendations. The supervisor noted Connor's criticism and Jessica's appropriate response. Another small victory in the documentation that would eventually determine if Connor's visitation restrictions could be lifted. Connor's most recent tactical shift had been presenting himself as a victim of parental alienation, claiming Jessica was poisoning Lily against him. The accusation was particularly ironic, given that Jessica meticulously avoided speaking negatively about Connor in Lily's presence, understanding that children should form their own opinions about parents. The court sees through it, Patricia assured Jessica after a recent hearing. Your consistent facilitation of visitation, despite his cancellations, speaks volumes. Keep doing what you're doing. The greatest challenge remained co-parenting with an abuser whose primary interest was control rather than Lily's well-being. Jessica developed strict boundaries. Communication only through the court-approved co-parenting app. Exchanges only at the supervised visitation center. No deviation from court orders without written agreement through attorneys. It's exhausting, Jessica admitted during a family dinner celebrating Lily's first birthday. Every interaction is a potential power play. Every request hides an agenda. I can't just be Lily's mom, I have to be strategist, record keeper, and boundary enforcer too. Despite these ongoing struggles, Jessica had built a life Connor couldn't touch. She had supportive employment, a safe home, healthy relationships, and most importantly, her sense of self had returned, stronger and more defined than before. The most powerful moment of Jessica's recovery came during a routine custody exchange when Lily was 14 months old. Connor, frustrated by the supervisor's presence, made a cutting remark. "You'd still be nothing without me, you know. I made you who you are." Jessica looked at him calmly, bouncing Lily gently on her hip. "You're right, Connor. You did make me who I am today, just not in the way you intended." She handed Lily to the supervisor for the exchange. "You taught me exactly what I don't want in my life, how strong I really am, and what I'll never tolerate again. For that lesson, I suppose I should thank you." Connor's face darkened, but with the supervisor watching closely, he could only accept Lily and retreat to the visitation room. Later that night, as Jessica recounted the exchange, she seemed lighter somehow. "For 3 years, his opinion defined my worth. Today, his words meant nothing. I realized I'm completely free of his power. That freedom came with ongoing vigilance." Connor would likely never stop attempting to regain control through Lily. Each developmental stage, school decision, and medical choice would potentially become another battlefield. Jessica would need to maintain boundaries and documentation indefinitely. But watching my daughter that evening, laughing as she helped Lily take wobbly steps across our living room, confident in her decisions, comfortable in her own skin, I knew she could handle whatever challenges came next. The woman who had once knelt in the rain, believing she deserved punishment for buying a dress, now stood tall, creating a life of dignity and joy for herself and her daughter. Jessica's journey continues, as recovery from abuse is never truly finished. There are still difficult days, triggering encounters, and the ongoing stress of co-parenting with someone who views shared custody as a control mechanism rather than a responsibility. But Jessica faces these challenges, standing firmly on her own 2 feet, surrounded by a support system that will never again miss the signs or stay silent. If there's one lesson I've learned through this ordeal, it's that abuse thrives in silence and isolation. It wasn't Connor's wealth or connections that allowed his abuse to continue. It was our collective failure to name what we were seeing, to trust Jessica's subtle cries for help, to recognize that control is abuse, even when disguised as care or concern. Have you ever witnessed controlling behavior dismissed as protective or traditional? Have you noticed someone you care about becoming increasingly isolated or changing their behavior to please a partner? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone recognize warning signs in their own life or the life of someone they love. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences that might help others. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they deserve dignity, respect, and freedom in their relationships. Thank you for listening to our story. Remember that no one has the right to make you kneel, not for buying a dress, not for having an opinion, not for making independent choices. You deserve to stand tall in your own life, and if someone is trying to diminish you, there are people who will help you rise again.